they've got a nice cushion behind them to rely on. So when people say they're broke, it might just mean I can't afford that because I've got other goals, I've got other things that I'm saving for. I think this is when you start to question the habits you pick up when you're younger about impressing other people. You start to see that, I think for me anyway, starting out at university, I was still very much in that phase of I wanted to belong, I wanted to be part of a crowd, I wanted to experience things with other people. Then you get towards the end of those years and you really start to figure out who you are, and you start to realize you've got a choice. You don't just have to be the series of years that have gotten you to where you are now. I think when people go away to university and they're in a new place and they've got new friends, you almost have a choice to be who you want to be. So you can start at that point and say, right, I've always been like this with my money, but I can do something different going forwards. So you're experiencing a lot more choice, and it's not just driven by all of the things around you. The last point on those shaping years, so when I got my first job, and obviously an accountant by trade, you'd assume like, yeah, you'll be really good with money. So I got my first job, and after sharing a house with a girl at university who we were looking for all the plates and cutlery in the house, and it was all disappearing. And we were like, what's going on? Is someone like, how can this stuff be disappearing? And one day we were sitting on her bed, and my foot knocked under her bed. That's where all the plates and cutlery from the house with the dried on food was just stashing up under her bed. So basically, after that experience, I was like, by hook or by crook, when I start my first job, I'm not sharing with anyone. I'm going to have my own house, it's going to be nice. So I started on a graduate scheme in Nottingham. I got a nice city apartment in the centre of Nottingham city centre, and I was just like, oh, this is nice, so spacious. And after I've signed the rental agreement, and obviously I checked that I can afford the rent, then the council tax came. Then the TV license came. Then it was like 3 months later before the gas and electricity came. And I was just like, oh, okay, this living alone life is great in theory, but the practical element of it is that I actually couldn't afford it. And unfortunately, we're in a time where people don't ask themselves the question, can I afford it? You decide what you want to do. You decide this is the holiday I want. You decide this is the outfit I want. You decide this is how frequently I'm going to go out. This is how frequently I'm going to go for dinner, go to restaurants. Can I afford it? A lot of people don't ask the question. And so the challenge there is really, have you started with how much money you have and built your life around it? Or have you built your life expecting the numbers just to add up? Like all on their own, it's all just going to figure itself out. If you're in the camp, and trust me, you'd be surprised. When I go to some of the financial literacy events and speak to people, I've had people in their early 20s with £30,000 of debt. Not because they had a family emergency they had to support, but basically just living life too big. So it's about just making those choices. Am I just going to hope things will figure themselves out, or am I actually going to start with what I have and build my life around it? And if what I have isn't enough, then I can put a plan in place to increase that, but I'm not increasing my living expenditure and everything else around it until I have that in place. And then to today, where I think I've grown a lot. From the days of picking an apartment that looked nice and it was really shiny and it had this lovely kitchen. I was hardly ever there because I was working so much anyway. So all that money I was spending, I'm like, I don't know why. And now I think I'm in a place where I'm very clear about money mindset and questioning myself, even now, on the things I'm doing and why am I doing it? Am I doing it because it feels like that's what's expected? Even I feel like when I'm scrolling on Instagram, you don't realize how much it's just influencing you in terms of outfits. It's like you think it's inspiration, but actually it's distraction a lot of the time. It's like, oh, there's something else I could be buying. Here's something else I could be doing. Here's something else I could have. So now getting to a place where focus on opportunity, building my earning power, and having freedom, and really doing it on my own terms. So having worked in my industry for over 10 years now, I got to a point where I was in a job that I wasn't really enjoying. And you get different notice periods depending on where you are in the company. So I'm at a stage where you'd have to have 3-month notice period. And 3 months feels like a long time once you've decided that you're ready to move on. So I decided that I was ready to move on. And a lot of people were asking me, where are you going? And I said, I don't know. And I said it with a smile. The reason why I could say that with a smile is because I had saved enough not to have to worry, not to have to stay there complaining, being miserable, constantly. There are so many people that you can find in a situation where they're depressed, they don't want to be here, they're sucking the energy out of everybody around them because they feel tied down. So I had the choice to be able to say, I don't know, because I've built this career, I've got these savings behind me, I can take time to figure out what I want to do next. So for me, and it's interesting when somebody said financial freedom, it's that freedom that becomes really, really important. And I think especially for everyone who's at a stage where you're building your career or you're starting university and you're thinking of your career path, sometimes when we're focused on money, there was a really interesting story I heard a woman tell who was a really high-powered lawyer in America. And she was talking about the fact that all she wanted to be was this senior lawyer in this particular firm. That's all she wanted to do. The minute she got there, she was surrounded by people who had a certain type of lifestyle, a certain type of house, a certain type of car, they lived a certain lifestyle. So every time she got a pay rise, she needed to scale up and scale up and scale up. And one day she realized that she doesn't actually like what she's doing, but she felt like she was trapped. So sometimes when we're running after all of those goals, is money actually helping us achieve the things that we love and care about, or is it actually holding us back? Is it actually something that makes us feel like we have to keep running, like you're on a rat race basically, going round and round and round in circles, and you can't step off, you don't have the choice of taking a break because you've got no savings, or you've constantly increased your lifestyle and your expenditure to the point where you've got no wiggle room. So hopefully those sections of the money mindset have helped you to just think about your own money mindset, where you are, what you brought with you right from childhood through to university. I saw some people smiling when I said the one who's saving and stashing away, your friends already know you, right to today. And if you know that there are some things you need to work on, hopefully you can use the time in the breakout groups to decide on what your next steps are. So the last thing I'm going to touch on before our panelists join us on the stage is the financial ladder. Just like I was saying, how it's it can be exciting to focus on investing and buying properties and accumulating wealth. Sometimes I think we skip that part of building the right foundation. So if we go onto the financial ladder, starting, I'm not sure if it's big enough for you to see, but I'll run through all of it. So this financial ladder is just talking about different floors in an elevator, for example, with the ground floor being struggling with debt. Basically, you're not living within your means and you're spending more than you're making. So that's ground floor. So and I think sometimes people can live in denial and just put all the letters to the side and try and pretend this isn't happening. So if you know that's where you are, the best thing to do is to address it head on and to come up with a plan to move forward. The second floor, so first floor then, is where does your money go? So yes, you might not be in debt, but does money just come in and go out and you haven't got a clue? And you're like, oh my gosh, it's month, and where's all my money gone? Why don't I have enough to make it to the next payday? Then floor 2, where you're able to actually make a budget and stick to it. So you're building all of these from the bottom up. And I think the point I really want to make here is that don't jump to investing or jump to, I want to get loads of properties and I want to be an entrepreneur with these, multiple streams of income without building those basic financial principles. I'm actually coaching a young woman who's in her early 20s and she's earning 26K a year, which in London isn't necessarily that much. But when I look at how much she's able to save because she's focused, she's made a decision, and she's really, really building the right financial principles. And the principles you use when you've got a little are the same principles you'll use when you've got a lot. So if you're expecting that when I'm earning 70K, I'm suddenly going to be able to budget and save better, probably not. So it's better to start practicing those habits now. Identify your financial goals, short term, medium term, long term. So yes, your money should be used towards enjoying yourself now, but it should be spread out. There should be some that's for now, some that's for in the next 5 to 10 years, and some that's for later once you start working and contributing to pensions. Automate your saving. Just make it easy for yourself. So many people I talk to, they're like, oh, so I put £100 in my savings account, then I take £70 out because I needed to do X, Y, Z, and I borrowed £30 for myself, then I gave it back to and it's like, well, who are you tricking? Who are you tricking? It's you, yourself, and I. I don't know who are you having this dialogue with? It's almost like you want to convince yourself, like, yes, I've got the right habits. And really, you've just moved money around. You've used 10 minutes, 20 minutes of your time shifting it back and forth and come back to the net zero, basically. So if you're deciding on how much you're saving, automate it, make it happen every month, and stick to it. You're better off starting small than doing something that's not achievable and you keep moving it back and forth every month. You should aim to have 3 to 6 months living expenditure saved. So if you are lucky enough to live at home, you've got a great opportunity to save everything you're earning, and obviously your living expenditure is very low because you're living on bank of mum and dad and enjoying, so you should be making use of that time. But if you're thinking about things like investing and long-term goals, you shouldn't be doing any of that until you've got your living expenses covered. So they're saved, they're stashed away, ready for any rainy day event, any kind of thing that comes up that you didn't know was coming. Once you've got that in place, then you start looking at maximizing your pensions, investments, using tax-efficient allowances. So in a nutshell, it's building blocks. I think a lot of people want a get-rich-quick scheme, and if you've got a great opportunity to make use of either in your side hustles or your freelancing, as we've got one of the breakout groups to explore, or in your career that's giving you an opportunity to earn a lot of money, that's great. But you need to have these financial building blocks and build up from there. So we're going to go into our panelist introduction, and hopefully you can take this financial ladder and just thinking about where are you now and where are you trying to get to? Are you still in a place where you're struggling with debt, you can't manage your money, you're running out of money at the end of every month? Or are you at a place where you're ready to start investing because you've built a good, solid savings habit? Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, how you doing? Good. Got my notes on my phone. So we're going to go into the panel discussion right now. But before we go into it, my name's Eni Oshanaike, and I thought I'd introduce myself. I'm a marketing manager at a software company, and I've also got a couple side hustles, but we'll talk about that if you join my breakout. That's me pitching my breakout session to you guys. All right. So first, we have... I'd like to call to the stage Brother Deji Nihan, who's a wealth advisor and financial coach with many years' experience in the financial service sector. And then we have Fiona Colliday, an influencer and digital marketing strategist. And we have Mrs. Miriam Lewis, an experienced director, global product manager, and author and publisher. So I've done a little brief introduction of each of you, but I'd probably like to get you guys to expand a little bit more.
Hi, so hello everybody. Lovely to see you all here. Just a little bit about myself. It's interesting, Fiona spoke a little bit about mindsets, but sorry, Abby, I was looking at Fiona, sorry. It's interesting, Abby spoke about mindsets. So just a little bit about myself. Have most of you heard of Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Right, okay, so well, I grew up in a house raised by parents who displayed both of those personalities. So one parent that was very much a spend as it came in and, was really free with money. And another parent that was very much the save and invest and so on. A great combination, at the end of the day, if you're a couple and you kind of balance each other out. but an absolute nightmare if you're divorced, and each of them then have to kind of live separately. So you get to experience one parent that's struggling to make ends meet and another parent that's just very comfortable and secure. So I think that's the basis of my interest, to be honest, in financial literacy. I write financial literacy and educational resource materials as something I do in addition to my work, just to help instill those financial habits in young people. I sell a lot of the resources I write into schools, both home and abroad, and also deliver financial workshops in schools as well as in the workplace and various organizations. And I'm really very passionate about the idea of achieving financial peace. You're all very blessed because, you know, the earlier you imbibe and start getting these messages, the brighter the future is, to be honest.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Fiona Colliday, and I just want to say, Abby, thank you. Annie, thank you for putting this together. I'm sure you guys will agree it's such a blessing to have a workshop like this put together. So as Annie said, I am a social media entrepreneur and a digital marketing entrepreneur. So we've got lots of millennials in the house, so I'm sure you'll be very familiar with the term influencer. That is one part of what I do. So essentially, I share things that I'm passionate about on some of the major social media platforms, such as YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. You guys all know how it goes. And I have the privilege of working with brands who see that I have a reach and have an audience, and so they will pay me essentially to promote their services or their products. So that's kind of one way that I monetize through what I do. The second part of what I do is the kind of digital marketing consulting. So I will work with brands and companies, typically small boutique companies that want to just use social media to market themselves, to promote their services, and do this in a way that they can, you know, essentially profit for their business. So that's essentially what I do. I started off as a hair care blogger, so I started off just sharing my passion and eventually kind of clued up to the fact that I could monetize beyond that. So that's myself in a nutshell.
Hello everyone, my name is Deji Nayan, and I'm a trader accountant, but that's really not my focus. I am now a wealth coach, and what that means is I help people to think about their pension, investments, and mortgages. Why did I wanted to get into personal finance and wealth coaching? Is really because, I mean, when I was growing up, I grew up in Nigeria, and like Sister Marian said, I had different views from my parents. I mean, I have one parent that's quite risk averse, and I have another one that doesn't mind to do anything, just go for it as far as you feel like there's an opportunity there. So that kind of gave me some ideas. So I enjoyed, I think I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad from a very early age, and that gives me some idea in terms of, you know what, you could put your money to work on a passive way. You don't want to work for the rest of your life, and that's quite important to me. So I came into the UK, and different culture, obviously, and what that means was like there was times that there was just a difference in terms of me trying to get ahead. And I trained from 2008 to be a mortgage advisor, which was because I had passion in investing in property, and it was just something I love to do. So that was something I've been doing for some time. And looking at financial planning, I help people to think about their pension, and what that means is I see a lot of people make the mistake of overestimating what they could do in 1 year and underestimating what they could do over a long time. So I try to let people understand the power of a timeline. We'll all start from 0, and most likely we would end maybe at 100. There is a lot of statistics to show that we are all growing older. That means if you retire at 65, there's a lot of years that you will need to cater for that you'll not be working, and that's quite important to me. So it's helping people to think about a timeline, and different timeline would affect different things. I mean, we talked about student loan when you're at that stage. Some people, it could be because they want to get their first property, it could be so many things. So it's really understanding the timeline, and it helps us not to rush into things, and that's really a good thing. So I'll be talking about investing with Sister Marian, and really helping people to kind of, there are some conceptions about investing that we would help to help people to shed light on. And a lot of things happens because there is, a lot of childhood imprints, some things that we grew up with that we need to kind of find a way to walk away from, and that's it. So I really appreciate the fact that we are taking the time to take the education, and it's quite important to me. I'm part of CAP Money Coach as well, and I help people from a young age, from primary school, to think about money management. So that's.
Thank you for those great introductions. So it's actually great to have a panelist, kind of quite diverse panelist, because obviously we've got guy Fiona here, who's like a social media influencer, and I know a lot of the millennials right now, they're thinking about more broader ways of trying to make income just right apart from just the 9 to 5s. And then we've also got people from another generation, another demographic, but also they have said that in a nicer way, but they both look young, they both look our age. And it's great that we can have the viewpoints from different people. Now, the first question I want to ask is, what has been the most important financial principle to you? Now, before I ask that, I'll give my one. To me, my most important financial principle was delayed gratification. And it kind of feeds into something what Abby was talking about, where she was talking about being in university and wanting to stunt, but then realizing doesn't make sense in the long term. So a lot of I can only speak for my generation, a lot of us have a lot of things that we want to achieve based off of what we see in our peripheral, maybe because of social media, maybe because of the pressures of what we see all of our peers doing. But a lot of these things that you want to do now is great for now, but may not benefit you in the long term. And I always think, whatever decision I want to make, especially in my financial life, if I delay the gratification and I do something that has a long-term benefit, will that reap a better reward than doing something that will give me enjoyment now? So I always try and think with that long-term view. So delayed gratification is my financial principle. And now to start with you.
So mine is one I actually was questioning whether or not I would share it, because I literally feel like Abby shared this already. But mine is that to have financial freedom, you have to tackle your finances head on, first and foremost. And this is mainly coming from kind of the self-employed perspective, but just kind of knowing exactly, like Abby was saying, what you have, whether that's also having an understanding of what your reoccurring expenses are, what your savings goals are, what your debts are, so you can pay them off. But just tackling your finances head on, the thing that no one wants to do because it's scary, because you'll realize how much you really owe. But doing that first and foremost will then allow you to actually plan towards, paying the debts that you have and maybe being able to afford the things that you want to. And so then you will start to experience that more financial freedom, fulfillment, something that I experienced the hard way. You're just trying to kind of put the letters to the side. I didn't have letters, but just not being aware of exactly what you have on the table so that you can then live the lifestyle that you want to. So yeah, tackling your finances head on for sure.
Okay, I think for myself, it's I would say it's the saving is the principle. And just to explain that a little bit better, I guess based on background and everything else, I just never really want to run out of money. So I think for me, it was always about saving. So when I'd earn, as a single person, I think I would probably save about half of what I earned. So it was saving, and it was also always living below my means. Affordability was a big one. So I would say saving, putting aside a great amount of what I earned, and it would vary at different stages. Younger, it was more, but then as you're older, then maybe less, 20, 30% or something. I just act as if that money just doesn't even exist, to be honest. And then the other key thing is, you've touched on it, affordability. I don't buy what I cannot afford. That's the bottom line. Apart from, I guess, a home, as a family, we just don't buy things on credit cards, be it cars, be it whatever, holidays, nothing. If we can't afford it, we just don't buy it. That's the bottom.
I was just going to say, yeah, there's always that saying, if you can't afford it 3 times, don't buy it. So always remember that.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, for me, it was first to think about what Annie said. It was delayed gratification. But when I was growing up, delayed gratification meant something different. What that meant was I'll save up for the whole year, and I use all of that money to buy nice jeans. So that wasn't much helpful. But I mean, the key thing I like people to think about is if there's a lot of complexity in terms of finances. And I think, until we try to keep it quite simple, we'll be confused somehow. So my key principle is for people to keep it simple, not to overcomplicate things. It's a complex world out there, but let's keep it simple, and it will be quite useful for us. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Some great principles. I'm gonna write that down and act like I came up with them in the next time I do one of these panels. I got another question. What financial? It's good to learn from the principles, but it's also good to learn from other people's mistakes, because, as they say, a wise man learns from other person's mistakes. What financial mistakes have you made, and what have you learned from them?
Okay, so a bit like Abby, I learned a little bit the hard way. You can have the will and everything else, but you learn some things the hard way. So I bought my very first flat, I think, when I was probably about 22 or so, I'm not sure, but you know, all of the money went into just the flat. And then you now start the things you need to go into the flat. So there was a lot of things they'll do the hire purchase, which is why you now understand I just don't do credit cards or anything. There's a hire purchase, and then you buy, you know, maybe a sofa, things like that on hire purchase. The biggest mistake I think I made was doing things like that, but then also falling for the scam that is called consolidation loans without having imbibed the principle. And basically that's you're repaying all of these different loans, and if it's a bit too much for you, you know, £90 here on this, £140 on this, and so on for different items that you've borrowed money on, then some of the banks will say, let's put all of your loans together over a longer period of time, and let's reduce the payment so that you're better off. To be honest, if you haven't got the financial principles well grounded, all it means is you've just got a bit more money that you can spend and borrow, because now you've basically got more, and that's the mentality that they encourage. So for me, I would say those were the mistakes I made. Hire purchase very early on, and those consolidation loans basically.
Mine would be, as someone that's self-employed, to not play around with your taxes. It's a big one, and I think especially looking at the influencer side of what I do, a lot of influencers are earning money from the likes of YouTube, from the YouTube advertising network, and brands pay them, and they're like, oh, it's a small amount of money, it doesn't matter, but you have to put money aside for your taxes, because the day will come when you start to earn enough, and then, you know, you either file your taxes, and then they're asking you, well, you know, when did you start your business? And technically, you know, you feel like you just started now because the money says that you started now, but really you've been earning bits and bobs previously, and that counts. And so you don't want to put yourself in a position whereby, you know, you've got extra money that you need to pay. And on top of that, it's also when you do get to that stage when money's coming in quite regularly, to just get an accountant. I think that that's so important. I can't emphasize it enough. And I actually had a moment that I'm sure my husband will never forget, where my heart actually felt like it stopped for a minute, because I had submitted my taxes, sent them to my accountant. They sent me my tax bill, and there were quite a few zeros on the end. And my heart stopped for a moment, because I knew I didn't have that money saved aside. Fortunately, I realized that I hadn't actually accounted for some expenses that I should have, and so my accountant helped me to realize that. But if not for them, I would honestly just be in a state of extreme panic, extreme anxiety, because I was trying to figure it out myself. And of course, like, I don't have that accounting experience. So on one side, just make sure that you are, you know, clued up about your taxes you save. I mean, it depends on how much you earn, but for me, I know that I need to save 33% of whatever comes in, whether it's £100, £1,000, 33% of that I don't look at, it just gets put to the side. And then on top of that, when money's coming in quite regularly, get an accountant. It's a small fee for what could be otherwise a large expense. So, yeah.
I think for me, it was thinking I was too young to invest. And what that meant was, when I was growing up, in the uni, I could afford to buy a car, and at the same time, I was helping some of my older people to buy property. But I thought to myself, I was too young to invest. That what do I need an investment for? And that was, that's something I bite myself now, because if I look, the same amount of money I used to buy the car, now the property, the land would have been worth maybe 30 million or so in Nigeria or something. So thinking you're too young to invest it's not. It's quite deadly, because the earlier you tend to invest now, the better you can relax and have that financial independence quicker. So that's one big mistake for me.
Thanks, guys. There's some great takeaways that they gave us. I'd like to give my one now. One of my financial mistakes was that I've always been trying to be quite entrepreneurial, but stop me if you guys can understand this, because I had a friend from university that invited me because they're like, I'm making money. Let's go to this event. I'm making money, so I find myself at one of these Premier Inn hotels, and I think you know the rest of the story. If someone says they can give you passive income, there's no free meal. So always ask more questions, because you could be susceptible to want to make money fast without realizing that there's a caveat. So always ask deeper questions, and don't feel pressured into joining something if you haven't asked the questions, and because a lot of times they got pressure sales, and there's lots of psychology that goes into these ways that they get people to part with their money at those type of events. So just be wary of that. That's my financial. All right, cheers. But yeah, thanks for the panelists, and thanks for answering our questions.
Thank you very much. That was really, really informative. And I think, we can give them another round of applause. Hopefully you can see that part of what we're trying to do is that there's nothing you can't go and find online in terms of financial information. There are guides online, there's lots of information online, but sometimes it sticks with you more when you hear someone's story, when you hear their experience, and when you're in that same situation, you're thinking, yeah, I've heard that before. So if you end up in a Premier Inn hotel, you'll be like, yes, I've heard that before. This rings a bell. So we're going to be moving on into our breakout groups. We have breakout number 1 on side hustles and freelancing on my left-hand side. We have breakout number 2 on budgeting and saving on my right-hand side. And we have breakouts 3 and 4 at the back, where we had the welcome and registration. The tables are set up and the chairs are set up, so it's easily signposted. We're going to be coming back into this auditorium for the wrap-up at 1:40. So if the breakout leads, just make sure we have everyone coming back into the auditorium. Sorry, I said 1:40, 2:40. We'll be coming back at 2:40, so just make sure we come back in promptly, please, so we can start making our way to the breakout you registered for. Breakout 1, side hustles and freelancing on that side. Number 2 is budgeting and saving. Number 3, investing for beginners. Number 4, investing and property intermediate. If anyone's unsure about what the breakout sessions will involve, just let me know. There'll be some people at the back who can help you. So I'm just going to repeat that in case anybody came late and they're not sure about where the different breakouts are happening. Breakout 1 is on this side, side hustles and freelancing. Breakout 2, budgeting and saving. Breakout 3 is property and investing for beginners. Breakout 4 is property and investing intermediate.